So, what is the first lie ever told in the Bible? It's found in Genesis chapter 3 when the devil told Eve, "You will not die." Now, specifically, he was speaking of, "You will not die when you eat of that fruit." God said not to eat. When you go back to Genesis chapter 2 and you look at verse 17, when God tells Adam and Eve, "Hey, you can eat basically of any fruit in the garden, but of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you don't eat it, because the day you eat of it, you will die." When you look at that command, that's rather clear and simple to understand, isn't it? And perhaps we could say even harder to misunderstand. Yet Eve believed the devil's word. She believed his lie. Why? I propose from Genesis 3, 1 through 6, there are two primary reasons why she believed his lie. And I want to share them with you because, incidentally enough, when we believe lies today, it's often for the same reasons. Number one, Eve believed the devil's lie because she was persuaded by the devil. Now, keep in mind, by persuaded, I do not mean that the devil gave enough proof and evidence for Eve to believe what she believed, but yet still enough, he persuaded her. Well, how did he persuade her? Well, you look at chapter 3, verses 1 through 5. In particular, you notice the devil begins to instill doubt and question God's word. And then he flat out denies God's word, saying, "You will not die," never providing any evidence. And then when you look at verse 5, he attacks the character of God, when he basically tells Eve that God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. And when he attacks the character of God, he also undermines the word or the commands of God. Do you realize it's no different for us today? Sometimes we can be persuaded of a lie, again, not by evidence or proof. I mean, sometimes there may be a little bit of truth mixed in an error to perhaps convince us, even though it should not be convincing if we properly reason things out. But sometimes we believe lies just because they're told all the time. You've heard of the phrase or the idea, a lie that is told over and over again, left unchecked, becomes believable. And then you compound that with the idea or the concept of once more and more people believe it, then it becomes more and more acceptable to believe, and even to the point, shame on you if you don't believe it. Persuasion without proof. Secondly, though, the second reason why I think Eve believed the lie of the devil was because of her passions. Look at verse 6 now. Notice it says, "So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food," lust of the eyes, by the way, pleasant to the eyes, lust of the flesh is the first one. The second one's lust of the eyes. And then thirdly, it was desirable to make one wise, pride of life. She then eats of that forbidden fruit. In other words, as you look at 1 John chapter 2 and verse 16, the way or the three areas of temptation or the types of temptation that the devil tries to get us on is the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And when you look at verse 6 here, Genesis 3, all three of those types of temptation are combined into one here of eating of that forbidden fruit. And what's my point? Eve, secondly, believed the lie because she wanted to. Because it appealed to her passions. It appealed to her desires. And it's the same thing with us. Sometimes we'll believe a lie today because we want to. Because it's convenient for us to believe a lie. Maybe because we love sin or because it's just an easier route to take in life. We'll believe what we want to believe because that's what we want to hear, in other words. Well, here's something to keep in mind. Truth is not based upon the number of people that believe something. Truth is not based upon how often something is repeated, and truth is not based upon what we want to hear. Truth, rather, is based upon what does the evidence suggest and the conclusion we can come to based upon the evidence. That's being rational. That's being logical. In fact, God commands us as Christians to be that way. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 21 says to test or prove all things. 1 John chapter 4 and verse 1 speaks of to try the spirits, because there are many false prophets that have gone out into the world. The thing is that God-given ability to reason came from God, and he wants us to use it and to use it properly. And when we unbiasedly seek to use it properly, we'll come to know truth. And in turn, this will keep us from believing a lie.